So, today we're going to be talking about editing, or more specifically, how to start. Whether you want to start an editing company, film company, or be a YouTuber, or to start editing in general, this will help you in that regard. The first thing I want to talk about is equipment. Some people think that you need the best equipment like a MacBook Air or something similar to edit your videos. That's entirely false. You don't need really good equipment just to edit your videos. For example, a £300 gaming computer can usually run complicated edits on most software. Yes, it's true you'll need a somewhat good PC, but it doesn't have to be completely brilliant or top end. The tip a lot of people have is just to start early and then later buy more equipment once you know you're more into it and better at it, or even, making money. Speaking of softwares, you have to choose your preferred one. Now, no matter how many people tell you Premiere is better than everything else, they're all wrong. Editing software is a subjective topic. People who say Premiere is better have an opinion. I certainly haven't used Premiere because it's too expensive and has very little functionality. There are 5 different types of editing software that are widely accepted: HitFilm Pro, or Express for newer editors, Premiere, Final Cut Pro, and Sony Vegas. There are others, but they're not usually used or accepted. However, let's be real, since I did recommend lower level equipment, you may not be able to afford the high level software such as Premiere. So there are some softwares that are free, and there are multiple videos on that topic. But if you're pulling my leg, and I'm going to pretend you are, here's a few I recommend: Shotcut, HitFilm Express, all the onboard editing softwares such as Video Editor and iMovie. There's a couple others that I don't care about right now. But to say what you need to practice is very situational, including what you want to edit in the future and what software you're using. If you're using something similar to HitFilm, where it's VFX and editing in the same program, you probably want to start with how composite shots work. However, if you're using something closer to Premiere, you probably want to learn cuts, keyframing, and where all the buttons are. I'll give you the basics of the most important things you'll need to know. Keyframing is the movement of an asset, meaning images, text, and any other thing that's on screen and not part of the footage. There are different types of keyframing, but usually they'll show you a pattern that the asset moves in. The way it basically works is you set a start point where you want it to start from moving, then you set an end point where you want the asset to end on. It will then predict the path you want it to travel through, and get from the beginning point to the end point. These beginning and end points are called keyframes because they are the key frame the computer has to recognize. You can have one or more of these on a single asset, so you can make things move around on the screen anywhere within reason, as long as it makes sense with physics. Now, if you've got some of the free software, some of them may not have folder structure, so here's a timestamp if that relates to you. The folder structure in editing software is something that shouldn't be scoffed at, or you English people will know what I mean. Folder structure isn't just for people with severe OCD, it's for people who want to minimize the look of your files, but also find them easier. More than likely, unless you're doing amateur editing work, you're going to have over 30 assets in one project. Therefore, searching through these 30 assets would be a waste of time, and in editing, time is something you have to save. If you're working for a big company that wants something specific, then time is the only reason that you're there. To use folder structure, create folders and name them about what the kind of thing they are. For example, I like to name mine by what I use it for, such as having a folder for audio, footage, effects, and music. That's a basic idea of how to use it, so if you don't know, copy mine. Color labels are slightly like folder structure in that it saves you time and makes your job a whole lot easier. Using color labels means that you're able to just simply notice, oh, this is sky blue, that must be A-roll footage. I'll not edit that for now. I'll get onto A-roll and B-roll later when we talk about what things mean. Some software allows you to set color labels for things from the get-go, for example, having every audio that's imported turn red. These labels are up to you in terms of what means what, and some software allows for you to change the colors to have a default and their names. Just make sure you know what the colors means and which one is what. These color labels make you scrub through footage really quickly and efficiently, which is again important editing time, given that's what you're there for. So you may have heard me say things like A-roll and B-roll and scrubbing through footage. If you've never dropped out of school, you'll be familiar with the term technical terminology. This is the jargon or language of a specific profession or group of people. That's what the terms are. Let me explain them all. A-roll is the equivalent of background footage or voiceover. Not all styles of editing include both A-roll and B-roll, however, if you want a company to work for or make a company, these terms will fly around the place. A-roll in these videos, like the one I'm making now, is the voiceover because it is background of all my footage. Some people record facecam for their voiceover, and that is the literal definition of A-roll. However, B-roll is the equivalent of extra footage you put over the top. For example, in the tutorials, the B-roll will probably be the specific example that I'm talking about as I play the game over my footage. It's the little added bits you play, like a comedy clip or context clip or something over your A-roll footage. Like A-roll, this is mainly used in the workplace and you don't really need to know what it means to do YouTube. However, most YouTube tutorials that are advanced include these terms and therefore I'm going to teach you it. A-roll and B-roll are sometimes what you would name the folder structure, especially if you understand it. A lot of people use these terms to their editors in a workplace, and even then the files after it. So these are still important if you want to do YouTube, but not entirely as useful as if you're in a workplace. The other thing I mentioned was scrubbing through footage. Scrubbing through your footage is where you don't actually watch your footage, but you go through the timeline using the playhead. That's the little white line above and through the footage. You can just click and drag through your footage if you're looking for a specific part of it.
Hotkeys.
The next thing you'll need to learn is hotkeys or scripts. A hotkey I'm pretty sure everyone knows about, but it's a key that performs a functionality in the software. You can set these keys as different keys, so if you don't understand them, you can change them to what you like. You'll notice I also said scripts. Scripts are pieces of code that perform a functionality in your software, so basically just create extra hotkeys for you. This is usually used in sync with Premiere, but it works with other software too. Hotkeys are something else that saves you time in your editing process. Are you starting to see a pattern? Editing is not just a creative process a lot of new editors think it is. It's also workflow and saving time. Working for a YouTuber or doing YouTube means that you get to make more of the creative decisions, but you're still working for a company. If you're working for a company directly or making your own company, then you'll have to just do what they tell you and not be creative, which means it's all about workflow and time saving. That's where hotkeys come in. Instead of having to click on each functionality and give yourself RSI, you can press a key on your keyboard and it does the same thing, therefore saving you time and making you more money on videos. How to use cuts is kind of complicated depending on your situation, but a basic way of understanding it is this quote by someone who's good at editing. Never have a time in the video where there's no sound or movement in that video. That was said by someone who's good at editing and it's pretty useful. The idea is that you want to cut everything out where you're not speaking, or your employers or employees aren't. If you're not being entertaining or speaking, you need sound effects or music. That way there is some sound and movement inside of the video. It's the same as Twitch streaming when it comes to presentation as well. You don't want a single time in your video where you're not being entertaining, so if you control your presentation team, tell them to not be quiet ever. The same goes with the video. Think about it from a viewer's perspective. They have a few seconds before being bored and turning your program off or your video and going on to something else. This especially goes for YouTube, as they have so many opportunities to watch other things and they have to choose specifically you. The other thing with cuts is the type of cuts you can do. A couple people have made a video on that topic, and therefore I'm only going to be giving you a quick rundown of each cut and what they mean. I'll leave a link in the description to that video, and it's helpful for me and you to learn these cuts and what they actually mean. The first type of cut is the standard cut. This cut is literally just a transition between one thing and another just to get footage to footage. People don't really notice it unless they edit themselves. It's kind of subtle, but it makes a big difference. The next type of cut is the jump cut. What's the difference between a jump cut and a standard cut? Jump cuts people do notice, as it's completely out of context. You cut from one thing to something completely different, and so it gives the idea of jumping from one thing to another. It's usually used for memes and jokes. The next cut is called the J cut. This means you can see the audio before you actually see the footage that goes with it. This is used by mainly commentary channels such as I'm Alex, who uses it pretty much abusively. Here's a clip of him using it.
I think I can officially say this is the worst week there has ever been for me, ever. Which is so funny to see. I actually don't know where to begin.
Do you get the idea of how it works? You let the audio play before the actual video plays so that it seems like a smooth transition between the clips. The next type of cut is the L cut. This is the opposite of the J cut, where you see the video before you hear the audio. This is usually used in vloggers content when they want to make a montage of where they are. Here's an example. Because these are harder to understand than the jump cut and the standard cut.
So my audio right now will take us into the next shot.
This is usually used in vlogs, but I'll be honest, I don't watch vlogs personally, and therefore I gave you an example from the video I've watched about cuts. Keep in mind that these cuts are generalised and only most important cuts. There are other cuts that exist, but no one uses them on a general basis. Some editing software such as Premiere, although Premiere does technically have After Effects in the Adobe package, cannot actually use filters or effects. So if that applies to you, skip to the timestamp on screen, for the next thing I'm going to talk about is technically VFX. However, if you're using something such as HitFilm or After Effects, this is how the effects work. In HitFilm you create composite shots where you can add layers of text, assets, planes, animations and other things. But in a basic term, the effects just make a clip look different to the dry or unedited version of it. Using effects is once again personal preference on how you or your boss wants the videos to look, and therefore if you're at the mercy of a boss, you don't really need to know this other than how to use them, which is different in every software. Most of the basics of editing are based on the software you use, and therefore this is a generalization guide for all software, and you need to figure out the specific things from tutorials or experimentation. Another thing that you'll have to get comfortable with is transitions. They come in two forms, an audio transition and a video transition. Video transitions are usually accompanied by sound effects, at least in high-level editing anyway. Then audio transitions are usually accompanied by video transitions because there's only certain situations in which audio transitions are used as transitions, usually between voiceovers. Since these transitions by themselves don't really do much, it's why people use them with sound effects or another specific type of shot that they've done in the shot of the presentation production. These transitions also sync up with music music in montages, which is where they're mainly used. You also have different transitions with different software, and there's the final type of transition, which is the music transition, the ones I've used in this video to be exact. You have text on screen, usually animated for about 3 seconds, then you put music in the background, blurred footage underneath it. This footage is usually related, but people can't really see it, so it doesn't matter. I was speaking about sound effects earlier, and they are an essential part of the editing process along with music, which I'll talk about in a bit. The reason sound effects are so important is because of the way editing works. The reason some people have loads of pictures in their videos is because it visualizes things for the viewer. If you can give a peek into their brain and not just leave it up to their imagination to make things happen on your screen, you've done your editing job. And that works the same with sound. Whether you're doing funny moments video, montage, or a vlog, but mostly gaming stuff is what I'm experienced in anyway. If they hit a wall in game, you just do like a hitting wall sound effect, because in real life that's what it would sound like, but over dramatize it and make it like a cartoon. The idea for editing, as I've said, is to visualize everything that happens, and so I'm going to play you a short clip from someone called Juice, who abuses these sound effects in his editing style, and it really does come off good. I'm going to play you a few clips where he uses these sound effects to his advantage.
What is that? God,
Iron sight horrific. Why did you shoot me?
This is content.
Okay.
Side out.
Oh, what a style on her!
There's a few I would love to discuss in this video, but since I don't know him and I'm scared of getting copyrighted, despite the fact that he has nothing against me, I'm not going to show much, but even from the starting clip, you can hear the fact that he uses fart sounds to visualize the sound of failing because his teammate misses several shots. The other one I want to talk about is where the random glitch happens with the ragdoll of his teammate. He visualizes the idea that he hits the boxes and springs up towards them and therefore creates the effect of comedy. I could go on about these YouTubers that do funny moments and how they completely abuse sound effects to create comedy, but since this is the way I learned to use sound effects, hopefully you guys can take inspiration from the ways these people use sound effects as well. So I'm going to leave a link in the description to all the smaller channels I think can help you with sound effects, because the smaller channels tend to do it less subtly and therefore they are easy to notice. As well as using music for transitions, you can also use music for background sound rather than sound effects, or with sound effects as most people do. The best and more advanced editors tend to go between them using sound effects and music to give the effect they want. But where can you get some free to use music? Well, I'll start by heading to the YouTube audio library, since the majority of music on there is actually pretty good if you know what you're looking for and how to search it. Obviously, if you're a company, you'll have some music that you pay for and allows you to use their music or sound effects. However, if you're doing YouTube, here are some free options. If you're part of a company, head to the timestamp on screen. Some good examples are YouTube channels such as No Copyright Sounds, Free Music Wave, and some others. The audio library, as I've already mentioned, is a good one. There are some music sites that are free, however I don't recommend them because it's either not copyright free and hasn't been checked, or isn't very high quality. If you have a budget to spend on the music, however, there are some music sites that work. Check these videos for them, or just go to Epidemic Sound, or ccmixter.org, or some more of the more popular ones that you'll find with bigger YouTubers. But how can you know what music to use? Well, that's dependent on what kind of effect you want on your video. If you're going for a funny idea, you might want something bright with a light drum beat and some weirder and wackier instruments, maybe even a sci-fi feel. If you're doing a montage, you probably want a heavy drum beat with some vocals. If it's background music for a scene, you want to adapt to the type of scene you're talking about. For example, if it's a very sad scene, such as a character getting an illness or something similar, you want to put some sad music over it. Same for YouTube videos. If you have a sad feel, put some sad music over it. Music is very subjective and also something that's very situational, so I can't specifically help you, but I can say that it's all down to the mood you want with the music. You can even make the music yourself if you have the equipment and skill to do so. Just make sure you know what feel you're going for and you'll be fine. Overlays and pictures are also pretty situational in themselves, but generally they have an idea behind them, or they just visualize something. Overlays give a feel like a smoke overlay, meaning that it's a dramatic scene, or like a particle overlay, meaning it's a sci-fi or special scene. These overlays can be used in what type of color correction or grading, which I'll get onto later as well. But usually overlays use this extra layer of feel, like a flashback or something earlier in the movie or video, even earlier in your YouTube channel or film. They also give a view on the scene behind it as well, meaning that you're still going on the footage underneath that. Overlays also can be used in transitions, so instead of blurring the footage behind you, you can add a particle overlay just to make it look a bit more professional or that bit more different. They aren't always used for that, but they can be. Pictures is another topic in this section that's very situational. Editing styles vary from person to person, but there are common themes, and that's what this video is for. Pictures are used situationally to give a visualization to something within the video. For example, if someone says something really stupid that he or she wishes existed, you can create a Photoshop or whatever program you want to make that overlay on top of the video file. That's the layers of video and audio that's going to come in later. The simple explanation for this is just that the higher the video layer it's on, the higher it is on the track. For example, something on a video track 1 will play underneath something on video track 2. That's the simple basis of it, but it goes a lot deeper. Layers of audio can be muted for an entire layer, meaning that you have some background audio for your gameplay that you want to get rid of, you can just mute that track and put nothing else on it. But once again, it goes a lot deeper. Something else that will save you time is if you finish editing your A-roll footage, what you can do is you can lock that layer, meaning that you no longer have to move around or change that layer in any way. This allows you to undo stupid mistakes like accidentally deleting your A-roll, which isn't essential, but it does save you time, and that's what this is all about. Both types of these layers can be renamed so that you can find it again easier, to know which layer is which as well. For example, calling your video track A-roll means you know it's your A-roll footage, and that's where it will go. It's another feature that will save you lots of time on a daily basis, as you don't have to search for the clips. Also, having some tracks for specific things such as music, sound effects, or background footage can be really essential. I like to have a track for everything but my outro, because then I can micromanage them accordingly and makes my whole editing process a whole lot more fun, faster, and easier. So what is meant by colour correction or colour grading, because there is a difference. Colour grading is mainly used in films or vlogging or anything that's outside because it emphasises what you want to emphasise, and then just leaves everything else in the background. Colour correction runs by colours, so bumping up a colour will make it pop or stand out more. You can make colours more visible or more saturated or lighter with some software. Mainly when using colour correction, people like to make the main colour red, green or blue, or RGB if you're familiar with computer lighting or art. These main colours need to stand out because they are the ones the viewers notice, but if there's something else in the shot that you want people to look at, then use colour correction to make that stand out. Basically, it makes things look more professional and brighter. But what does colour grading do? Colour grading isn't built to fix a bad camera or to make a colour stand out. A colour grade is technically an overlay, but in filter form. It makes things conform to a certain colour you tell it to, and the amount of colour is also based on what you tell it to. For example, if I was to make the gameplay really blue right now, and you would notice the colour grade, but if I was to slightly change the colour grading right now, you would barely notice it, if at all, and it would make the colour that I want it to be. If you noticed it, tell me and I'll halt the comment the first one that I see is right anyway. Colour grading is used if you have a specific idea for the film or channel. Maybe it's your colour you base your movie off or your channel off, or the shot itself is much more of one colour so you want to change that. I know text is probably a really basic thing to talk about, but I wanted to leave it closer to the end, because I think that many people focus on text right at the start when, unless you're using it for subtitles in a music video or funny moments, it's extremely situational. The only time you use text otherwise is credits, emphasis, or maybe you hit a milestone and you want to make sure people heard it, or even just subtitling something everyone says because their accent is too thick for people to understand. How to actually get text is something that you'll need an actual tutorial for your specific program, but how to use it is once again generalised. Other than the points I've already mentioned, you can use it for things like a transition or a note that you want people to know, like an excuse. Now that you get the idea of all the basics that you need to start editing, what should you start editing? And then I'll lead you on to something that you will understand, since now you will no longer be a beginner. If you're looking to go into editing for film companies, the best you can do is find someone you know who is a director or has a camera and start making films for you to edit. Editing anything in this sense will get you exposure so that people will contact you for more editing jobs in the future. If you're looking to go into making YouTube videos, then just start. It doesn't matter what you have, how cringy you are, or how you don't quite know what to do. Just start by doing something. Edit something, and after a few years of consistently editing, you'll get the idea of it. If you're looking into editing for YouTubers, then not only start making your own videos on your YouTube channel so you can get the general idea of how to edit them, but also so you know how to make it easier for the people you edit for, as you know what you're doing. Not only that, but it's a way people can find you. It's a way that people can find and contact you so you can have a business email and you can edit for some more people. Or if you've got a friend who does YouTube videos, you can start by editing for them for free. Yes, you won't get paid for it, however you'll get the idea of how editing for someone else works. That'll eventually build up and you'll get good at it. Once you get good at it, people will notice you're editing for them and you've struck gold, because they will then contact you if you ask your friend to give you credit. Once they contacted you, you can now start working as an editor for a YouTuber. If you're looking into making your own films, then just start making films. Whether it be with a budget of nothing or 600 grand, it doesn't matter what the budget is. As long as you start, you'll soon get better at it, and once you do, people will notice the hard work you're doing, and then you will have to hang in there. I know this has been quite a long video for me, but I feel I needed to make this since I've been getting the question for quite a bit from friends and randoms, so I thought I'd address it. I said I'd recommend something you can go and watch if you want to be an intermediate to advanced editor, and I'm going to. Taran Van, whatever his name is, made a video, and it's 4 hours long, but don't let that deter you. It was really helpful for me, and if you watch it through for you, it will be really helpful for you too. I'll leave a link in the description and in the pinned comment. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.